The howling wind of the Arctic night swept across the frozen landscape like a living thing, carrying with it the bite of winter that could freeze a man's breath in his lungs. Dr. Cassian Vale pulled his thick sweater tighter around his shoulders as he sat hunched over his microscope in the dimly lit laboratory of Research Station Epsilon 7. The remote outpost, situated 300 miles from the nearest human settlement, had been his home for the past 8 months. Cassian was a xenobiologist, one of the few humans on Earth who specialized in studying alien life forms. At 28, he had already made groundbreaking discoveries about the microbial specimens collected from various meteor crashes and space debris. But tonight, like most nights, he worked alone in the haunting silence of the Arctic wilderness. The RER station's heating system hummed softly, fighting against the brutal cold outside. Through the frosted windows, nothing was visible except the endless expanse of white snow and the occasional dance of the northern lights, painting the sky in ethereal greens and blues. Cassian had grown accustomed to the solitude, finding comfort in his research and the vast library of classical music that kept him company during the long polar nights. He was examining a particularly fascinating sample of crystalline formations when the lights flickered. The generator coughed once, twice, then settled back into its steady rhythm. Cassian barely looked up from his work, used to the occasional power fluctuations that came with living at the edge of the world. But then came the knock. 3, deliberate. Raps against the metal door of the station, barely audible above the wind, but unmistakably real. Cassian's head snapped up, his heart suddenly racing. No one was supposed to be out here. The next supply drop wasn't scheduled for another 6 weeks, and the storm raging outside would ground any aircraft for days. He stood slowly, his chair scraping against the metal floor. Another series of knocks, more urgent this time, followed by what sounded like a muffled cry. Cassian's training kicked in as he grabbed the emergency medical kit and moved toward the entrance. Whatever was out there in the frozen hell of the Arctic night, it needed help. The heavy door protested as he unlatched it, the howling wind immediately trying to tear it from his grasp. Snow whipped into the station like frozen needles, stinging his face and obscuring his vision. But there, collapsed against the doorframe, was a figure unlike anything he had ever seen. She was humanoid, but clearly not human. Her skin held a faint, luminescent quality, pale blue-white like moonlight on fresh snow, and seemed to glow softly in the darkness. Long silver hair fell in waves around her shoulders, and her features were elegant yet alien, with slightly larger eyes that held flecks of starlight. She wore a form-fitting suit made of some unknown material that seemed to shimmer even in the dim light. But it was her condition that immediately captured Cassian's attention. She was injured badly, dark fluid that might have been blood seeping from a wound on her shoulder. Her breathing was labored, and those magnificent eyes were clouded with pain and exhaustion. "Please," she whispered in accented English, her voice like music despite her obvious distress. "Help me." Cassian didn't hesitate. He scooped her up in his arms, surprised by how light she felt despite her tall frame, and carried her inside. The wind slammed the door shut behind them as he laid her gently on the examination table in his medical bay. Her skin was cold to the touch, but not with the deathly chill of hypothermia. Instead, it felt like touching polished marble that had been kept in moonlight. As he began to examine her wounds, she watched him with those incredible eyes, studying his every movement with an intelligence that was both alien and deeply familiar. "My name is Cassian," he said softly as he cleaned the wound on her shoulder. "You're safe now. Can you tell me your name?" She was quiet for a long moment, as if translating his words in her mind. "Nix," she finally replied, her voice gaining strength. "I am Nix of the Valdari." Cassian's hands stilled. He had heard rumors, whispered theories among the scientific community about advanced alien civilizations. But to have one of their kind here, in his laboratory, was beyond anything he had ever imagined. "Your ship," he said, continuing to tend to her wounds. "Did it crash?" Nix nodded weakly. "Storm, damaged navigation systems, emergency landing protocols engaged, but—" She gestured vaguely toward the door, toward the frozen wasteland beyond. "Ship is damaged beyond repair." As Cassian worked, he found himself stealing glances at her face. Despite her alien nature, there was something undeniably beautiful about Nix. Her features were sharp, yet graceful, and when she looked at him, he felt as though she could see directly into his soul. Her presence filled the small medical bay with an energy he couldn't quite describe, making the air itself seem to hum with possibility. "You speak English well," he commented, applying a bandage to her shoulder. "My people. We are explorers," she explained, wincing slightly as he secured the dressing. "We study many worlds, many species. Your language was familiar to me." Cassian finished treating her visible injuries and stepped back, his medical training warring with his scientific curiosity. Here was the discovery of a lifetime, first contact with an intelligent alien species, and yet all he could think about was the way her eyes seemed to hold galaxies within them. "Are there others?" he asked. "From your ship?" Nix shook her head sadly. "I was alone. Scouting mission." She attempted to sit up, then thought better of it as pain flashed across her features. "I cannot return to my people until the storm passes, and I can repair my communications array." "Then you'll stay here," Cassian said without hesitation. "At least until you're healed and the weather clears." She looked at him with surprise. "You would help me? Even though I am not of your kind?" Cassian met her gaze steadily. "You knocked on my door asking for help. That's all I need to know." For the first time since she had collapsed at his threshold, Nix smiled. It was a radiant expression that transformed her entire face, and Cassian felt something shift inside his chest, a warmth that had nothing to do with the station's heating system. As the night wore on, Cassian set up a comfortable sleeping area for Nix in the station's small guest quarters. She moved carefully, still weak from her injuries, but he could see the curiosity in her eyes as she examined the human technology. Around her, everything seemed to fascinate her, from the simple electric lights to the coffee maker in the small kitchen. "Your people," she said as he helped her settle onto the narrow cot. "They live simply." "Compared to your technology, I'm sure we do," Cassian replied. "But we make do." Nix reached out tentatively and touched his hand. Her skin was warming now, no longer cold as marble but soft and surprisingly human-like. "Thank you, Cassian of the humans. Your kindness will not be forgotten." As he turned to leave her to rest, Nix called out softly, "Cassian, in my culture, when someone saves another's life, a bond is formed, a connection that transcends the physical." He turned back to her, seeing something in her eyes that made his heart race. "What kind of connection?" "The kind that changes both lives forever," she whispered, her voice carrying promises he didn't yet understand. That night, as the storm continued to rage outside and Nix slept in the next room, Cassian found himself unable to concentrate on his research. The alien woman's presence had filled his isolated world with something he hadn't realized he was missing. For the first time in months, the Arctic Research Station didn't feel lonely. He stood at the window, watching the aurora dance across the sky, and wondered if his life would ever be the same. In the space of a few hours, everything he thought he knew about the universe had changed, and at the center of that change was a woman from the stars who had knocked on his door at midnight, bringing with her the promise of discoveries that went far beyond anything he had ever imagined. Little did he know that Nix, lying awake in the darkness of her small room, was thinking the same thing about him. The morning light filtered through the frosted windows of Research Station Epsilon 7, casting ethereal patterns across the laboratory walls. Cassian had barely slept, his mind racing with thoughts of the extraordinary woman now resting in his guest quarters. He moved quietly through the station, preparing breakfast and checking the storm's progress through the weather monitoring systems. The blizzard had finally begun to subside, but the snow continued to fall in thick, lazy flakes that would keep any rescue or supply missions grounded for at least another week. Part of him was relieved by this development, though he couldn't quite admit why. A soft sound from the guest quarters made him turn. Nyx emerged, moving with fluid grace despite her injuries. She had discarded the damaged outer layer of her suit, revealing a form-fitting undergarment that seemed to be made of some advanced material that adapted to her body temperature. The sight of her took Cassian's breath away. Her luminescent skin seemed to glow more vibrantly in the daylight, and her silver hair caught the light like spun starlight. "How are you feeling?" he asked, trying to keep his voice steady and professional. "Much better, thanks to your care," she replied, her melodic accent making even simple words sound like poetry. "Your medical knowledge is impressive for a species so young." Cassian felt a flush of pride at her compliment. "Would you like some breakfast?" "I'm afraid it's nothing fancy, just basic human food." Nyx nodded, following him to the small kitchen area. As he prepared coffee and heated some packaged meals, she examined everything with intense curiosity. When she accidentally brushed against him while reaching for a cup, both of them froze. The contact sent an electric sensation through Cassian's entire body, and he saw her eyes widen in surprise. "Did you feel that?" she whispered. "Feel what?" he asked, though he knew exactly what she meant. "The resonance," she said softly. "It's stronger than I expected." Over the next few days, as Nyx recovered her strength, they fell into a comfortable routine. Cassian continued his research while she explored the station, asking countless questions about human technology and culture. In the evenings, they would sit by the observation window, sharing stories about their respective worlds. Nyx told him about Valdari Prime, a world of crystal cities that floated among the clouds, where her people had mastered the arts of energy, manipulation, and interstellar travel. She spoke of vast libraries containing the knowledge of 1,000 worlds, and of the Great Harmony, a telepathic connection that linked all Valdari minds. "We are explorers by nature," she explained one evening, as they watched the aurora paint the sky in brilliant colors. "Each of us is sent on solitary missions to study other species, to understand the diversity of consciousness throughout the galaxy." "Doesn't it get lonely?" Cassian asked, thinking of his own isolation. Nyx turned to look at him, her starlit eyes reflecting depths of emotion he was beginning to recognize. "It did, until I found you." The admission hung in the air between them, charged with possibility and danger. Cassian felt his heart racing as he met her gaze. "Nyx, She reached out and placed her hand over his. The contact sent waves of warmth through both of them, and Cassian saw her breath catch. "In my culture, this connection we share has a name, Veltar. It means soul recognition. It's said to happen when two beings are meant to be together across all time and space." Cassian's scientific mind wanted to rationalize what was happening between them, but his heart was already lost. "Is that what this is? What we're feeling?" Instead of answering with words, Nyx leaned closer. Her lips met his in a kiss that was soft, tentative at first, then deepening with a passion that seemed to ignite the very air around them. When they broke apart, both were breathing heavily, and Cassian could see a faint luminescent glow emanating from Nyx's skin. "My people respond to intense emotion," she explained breathlessly. "You're making me shine, Cassian." From that moment, their relationship crossed into territory that both knew was dangerous. They spent their days learning about each other's worlds and their nights, discovering the language of touch and desire that transcended species. Cassian learned that Nyx's luminescent skin was incredibly sensitive, that touching certain patterns along her collarbone could make her gasp with pleasure. She discovered that humans responded to gentle caresses along the neck, and that Cassian's breathing would become ragged when she traced patterns on his chest. Their physical connection was unlike anything either had experienced. When they made love, Nyx's entire body would glow with soft blue light, creating an otherworldly beauty that left Cassian speechless. The sensation of her skin against his was electric, literally sending small charges of energy between them that heightened every touch, every kiss. "You're changing me," Nyx whispered one night as they lay entwined on Cassian's narrow bed. "My people don't normally form such strong attachments. We're taught that emotional bonds interfere with our mission objectives. Maybe your people are wrong," Cassian replied, stroking her luminescent hair. "Maybe connection is exactly what makes exploration worthwhile." But their happiness was shattered on the 7th day when the communication array suddenly crackled to life. Director Thorne's harsh voice filled the station, cutting through their peaceful morning like a blade. "Dr. Vale, this is Control. We've detected an unidentified energy signature at your location. Report your status immediately." Cassian felt his blood run cold. Nyx, who had been preparing breakfast, went completely still, her skin losing its warm glow and becoming pale as winter moonlight. "They know," she whispered. Cassian keyed the microphone with trembling fingers. "Control, this is Dr. Vale. Status is normal. No unusual activity to report." "Negative, Doctor. Our satellites have detected clear evidence of alien technology. We're dispatching a recovery team. Maintain position and prepare for immediate extraction." The transmission ended, leaving them in horrifying silence. Nyx's eyes filled with a liquid that might have been tears, though they shimmered like liquid starlight. "If they take me," she said quietly, "they will never let me go. Your government will want to study me, to learn our technology. They will see me as a specimen, not as a person." Cassian pulled her into his arms, feeling her body trembling against his. "I won't let that happen. We'll find a way." "How?" she asked desperately. "Your people have weapons, ships. I have only my damaged communicator and no way to contact my ship." For the first time since becoming a scientist, Cassian found himself wishing he had chosen a different path, one that might have given him the resources to protect the woman he loved. Because that's what this was, he realized with startling clarity. Love. He loved this alien woman with a depth that defied logic or reason. "There has to be something," he said fiercely. "Some way to get word to your people." Nyx pulled back to look at him, her expression filled with both hope and despair. "There is one possibility. If I can reach my ship's wreckage, I might be able to boost the signal using your station's power grid, but it would require going out into the storm, and the ship is nearly 10 kilometers away across unstable ice." "Then that's what we'll do," Cassian said without hesitation. "It's too dangerous. The temperature out there could kill you in minutes, and the ice fields are treacherous. Even if we make it to the ship, there's no guarantee the communication systems can be repaired." Cassian cupped her face in his hands, memorizing every detail of her alien beauty. "Nyx, in the past week, you've become everything to me. My world was empty before you came, and it will be empty again if they take you away. I'd rather die trying to save you than live knowing I let them turn you into a laboratory specimen." She closed her eyes, leaning into his touch. "Veltar," she whispered. "This bond between us, it's real, isn't it?" "More real than anything I've ever known," he replied. They spent the rest of the day preparing for their desperate journey. Cassian gathered cold weather gear, emergency supplies, and portable equipment, while Nyx studied the topographical maps of the region. As evening approached and the recovery team's arrival grew imminent, they stood at the station's exit, knowing they might not survive the next few hours. "Whatever happens," Nyx said, her hand intertwined with his, "I want you to know that meeting you has changed everything for me. Before you, I was just an observer, studying life from a distance. You taught me what it means to truly live." Cassian kissed her deeply, pouring all of his love and desperation into the contact. When they separated, he could see the determination burning in her starlit eyes. "Let's go bring you home," he said. Together, they stepped out into the howling wind and blowing snow, two lovers from different worlds united against the forces that would tear them apart. Behind them, the warm lights of the research station faded into the storm, while ahead lay only darkness, danger, and the faint hope of salvation among the stars. The Arctic wind cut through their protective gear like frozen knives as Cassian and Nyx made their way across the treacherous ice fields. The GPS tracker in Cassian's hand showed they were still 6 kilometers from the crash site, and the storm showed no signs of abating. Nyx moved beside him with surprising grace, her alien physiology seeming better adapted to the harsh conditions than his human body. "There," she called out over the howling wind, pointing toward a faint glow in the distance. "The ship's emergency beacon." They pressed forward, their breath forming clouds of ice crystals that were immediately swept away by the relentless gale. Cassian's face was numb with cold despite his protective mask, but he pushed on, driven by love and desperation in equal measure. The wreckage of Nyx's ship was unlike anything Cassian had ever seen. It appeared to be made of a material that seemed to flow like liquid metal, partially buried in a snowdrift, but still emanating a soft, pulsing light. The craft was sleek and elegant, roughly the size of a small aircraft, but with curves and angles that seemed to follow some alien aesthetic beyond human understanding. "The communication array is in the central compartment," Nyx explained as they approached. "But I'll need power from your equipment to boost the signal." Working together in the biting cold, they managed to establish a connection between Cassian's portable generator and the ship's systems. Nyx's hands moved over the alien controls with practiced ease, her skin beginning to glow brighter as she interfaced with the technology. "It's working," she breathed, her eyes wide with hope. "I'm getting a response from the orbital relay. My people, they're coming." But their moment of triumph was shattered by the sound of approaching helicopters. Through the swirling snow, Cassian could see the lights of military aircraft descending toward their position. Director Thorne's recovery team had found them. "No," Nyx whispered, her hands still working frantically at the controls. "I need more time." The helicopters landed 50 meters away, and armed soldiers began advancing through the storm. At their head walked a tall, severe-looking man in a heavy coat, Director Thorne himself. His eyes locked onto Nyx with the cold intensity of a scientist who had just discovered the find of a lifetime. "Dr. Vale," Thorne called out, his voice carrying despite the wind. "Step away from the specimen. You're interfering with a matter of national security." "Her name is Nyx," Cassian shouted back, moving protectively in front of the alien woman. "She's not a specimen, she's a person." Thorne's laugh was harsh and mocking. "A person?" "Dr. Vale, that thing crashed onto our planet uninvited. It represents a potential threat to all humanity as well as the greatest scientific opportunity in history. Stand aside." The soldiers raised their weapons, advanced energy nets designed to subdue and capture alien life forms. Cassian felt his heart sink as he realized how futile their situation had become. But then Nyx's hand touched his shoulder, and he felt a strange, tingling sensation. "Cassian," she whispered, her voice carrying an odd, harmonic quality. "Trust me." Suddenly, the air around them began to shimmer. Nyx's entire body blazed with brilliant blue-white light, and Cassian felt energy coursing through him wherever she touched. The sensation was incredible, like being connected to the power source of a star. "What's happening?" he gasped. "Veltar bonding," she replied, her voice now echoing with otherworldly resonance. When two souls truly connect, my people can share their life force. You're becoming part of me as I am part of you. The soldiers halted their advance, weapons trained but unable to fire as the energy field around Cassian and Nyx intensified. Director Thorne's expression shifted from confidence to concern as he realized he was witnessing something beyond his understanding. "Take the shot," he ordered, but the soldiers hesitated. "Sir, the energy readings are off the charts," one of them reported. "If we disrupt whatever this is, the feedback could—" His words were cut off by a new sound that penetrated even the storm's fury, a deep, thrumming note that seemed to come from the sky itself. Through the swirling snow, shapes began to materialize, large, graceful vessels descending from the clouds like angels made of starlight. Nyx's rescue had arrived. The lead ship landed with impossible smoothness, its hull shimmering with the same luminescent quality as Nyx's skin. A hatch opened without sound, and a figure emerged. He was tall and regal, clearly Valdari, with the same ethereal beauty as Nyx, but with a masculine bearing that spoke of authority and power. "Zephyr," Nyx breathed, and Cassian felt her joy and relief through their shared connection. Her brother strode forward with purposeful grace, flanked by two other Valdari who moved like dancers despite the harsh conditions. When his eyes fell upon Nyx and Cassian, still blazing with shared energy, his expression became one of wonder. "Sister," he said in their melodic language, then switched to English. "What have you done?" "I have found my Veltar," Nyx replied, her hand tightening in Cassian's. "My soul bond." Zephyr's gaze shifted to Cassian, studying him with an intensity that was both alien and oddly familiar. "A human? This is unprecedented." Director Thorne stepped forward aggressively. "I don't know what kind of light show this is, but this is Earth territory. You're trespassing, and we demand—" Zephyr looked at him with the kind of patient expression one might give to a child throwing a tantrum. He raised one hand, and Thorne simply stopped speaking, his mouth moving but no sound emerging. "Forgive the interruption," Zephyr said politely to Cassian and Nyx. "We have much to discuss, but perhaps we should continue this conversation in more comfortable surroundings." The next few hours passed in a blur that felt like a dream. Cassian found himself aboard the Valdari ship, surrounded by technology that seemed like magic. The interior was beautiful beyond description, with flowing walls that pulsed gently with bioluminescent patterns and surfaces that responded to touch like living things. Zephyr explained that he had received Nyx's signal and immediately set course for Earth with a small diplomatic vessel. The Valdari had been observing humanity for some time, waiting for the right moment to make contact. Nyx's situation had accelerated that timeline considerably. "The bond you share with my sister," Zephyr said to Cassian as they sat in what might have been a conference room. "It is sacred among our people. Veltar connections are rare, even between Valdari. That it has formed between species is miraculous." Nyx sat beside Cassian, their hands intertwined, the energy connection between them now settled into a warm, constant presence. "What does this mean for us?" she asked. Zephyr was quiet for a long moment. "Traditionally, you would both return to Valdari Prime, where the bond could be properly studied and celebrated, but these are not traditional circumstances." "I can't leave Earth," Cassian said firmly. "My work, my life, everything I know is here. And I cannot abandon my Veltar," Nyx added. "The bond is not just emotional. We are literally connected now. Separation over great distances would cause both of us significant pain." Zephyr nodded slowly. "There is another option. The Valdari Council has been considering establishing a permanent research station in this system. Earth's biosphere is unique, and your species shows remarkable potential. If Nyx were to become our first official ambassador, we could stay together." Nyx finished, her eyes lighting up with hope. The solution was elegant in its simplicity. Nyx would serve as Earth's first alien ambassador, working with human scientists like Cassian to facilitate peaceful contact between their species. Cassian would become humanity's first xenobiological liaison, helping to bridge the gap between two very different civilizations. Director Thorne, when his voice was restored, protested vehemently. But when faced with the prospect of peaceful first contact versus potential interstellar conflict, even he had to admit the wisdom of cooperation over confrontation. 6 months later, Cassian stood in the garden of the newly constructed Valdari Human Research Center, watching Nyx tend to a collection of plants from both worlds. She wore a flowing dress made of the adaptive Valdari material, and her skin held a constant, gentle glow that had become even more pronounced since their formal bonding ceremony. "The earth roses are adapting well to the Valdari soil nutrients," she said, her voice filled with the joy of discovery. "Look how the petals are beginning to show phosphorescent properties." Cassian moved to stand behind her, wrapping his arms around her waist. The connection between them had grown stronger over the months, to the point where they could share emotions and even surface thoughts. It was an intimacy beyond anything he had ever imagined possible. "I love watching you work," he murmured, into her hair, which still smelled faintly of starlight and distant suns. She leaned back against him, her contentment flowing through their bond like warm honey. "Do you ever regret it? Giving up your quiet life at the research station?" Cassian turned her around to face him, looking into those incredible eyes that still held galaxies within them. "Nyx, before you knocked on my door that night, I was just existing. You didn't just save my life. You gave me a life worth living." Their kiss was interrupted by a gentle chime from the communication system. Zephyr's voice filled the garden, with news that made them both smile. "Sister Cassian, I bring greetings from the Valdari Council. The first human exchange students have been approved for transport to Valdari Prime, and we have received requests from 12 other species who wish to establish similar diplomatic relations with Earth. It seems your love story has become something of a legend across the galaxy." As the sun set over their shared world, painting the sky in colors that seemed to echo the aurora where they first found each other, Cassian and Nyx held each other close. Their love had not only overcome the barriers between species, but had opened doorways to a future neither could have imagined alone. In the distance, ships from a dozen worlds dotted the sky like new stars, all drawn by the story of two souls who had found each other across the vast emptiness of space. And at the center of it all, a human scientist and an alien explorer continued to discover that the greatest adventures were the ones they shared together. Their midnight encounter had indeed changed everything, proving that love truly was the universal language that could unite not just two hearts, but entire civilizations. Among the stars,